Hey George.
Hi Alex.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, just tell me a little bit about yourself. You're to do with hunting. What is your exact title?
I am the Membership and Campaigns Director of the British Hound Sports Association, which is the governing body of hunting in England and Wales.
Well, lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time today. Don't know a great deal about hunting. About how many hunts are there in the UK? Facts and figures on this?
247, I think, packs of hounds that are registered with the BHSA.
Right. And am I right, there's about 25 couple, which is about 50 hounds a pack?
Something like that, yeah. It depends on how many days a week an individual pack goes hunting. So if you go hunting 3 or 4 days a week, you'll need more hounds so that they get a rest.
3 or 4 days a week? That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, most go twice a week, but some do 3 days, some do 4 days, and then there's more hunting days at the end of the shooting season than during the shooting season, because shooting and hunting have to work together.
Yes. You'll have seen the footage. Hounds being killed, tossed on piles. How do you defend that?
Hounds are working animals. We have different types of hounds, but the average length of a foxhound, for example, if you keep one as a pet, and don't make particularly good pets, but they'll live, like a lot of big dogs, maybe 10 years. And at the end of their lives, they get to a position where they are not able to carry on going hunting. Hounds are great athletes. They can run up to 20 miles in a day, and they might do that 2 or 3 times a week. And just like human sprinters and long distance runners, they develop arthritis, they develop joint problems, things like that. And so at the end of their lives, they can't go hunting, but they understand what it is. So when they see the other hounds going hunting and they get left behind because they can't operate, they are miserable. And also, hounds are pack animals, and they have alpha males and alpha females, and as they get older, the younger hounds coming up will take over those places as alpha males. So when the hounds get to the end of their working lives, and they are unhappy because they can't go hunting, they're unhappy because they might be being bullied by the younger hounds coming on, then we will put them to sleep. They can be rehomed. It's not very easy because they're not house trained, they need lots of exercise, and when you take them out for a walk they will hunt. So whilst it's possible to rehome hounds, the number of people who could actually look after a hound is are quite limited. So we do make that decision to put them to sleep rather than just sending them out into the world where we know a lot of people won't be able to look after them. We like to make sure that we know exactly what's happening to them.
Thank you, that is interesting. Obviously there's a number of misconceptions around hunting. What are your top 3? What have you come across that people don't understand?
There are so many. The entire thing is based on misconceptions.
You call it trail hunting, everybody else calls it fox hunting. What do you do if you're out trail hunting and they run off and catch a fox? Is that just an accident, or how do you handle that? There are instances of that happening, aren't there? Of people, we know that fox hunting has been banned, we know that you can't hunt foxes, and yet people are still going out hunting foxes. How do you explain that?
Well, what we do, which we call trail hunting, is an exercise that we've taken up since the Hunting Act banned the hunting of live quarry, and we do it to replicate the conditions of hunting live quarry. So with trail hunting, what we're doing is trying to lay a trail that tests the huntsman and the hounds. And the people who go out hunting want to watch the huntsman and the hounds working. And you might not think that sounds very interesting, but people like watching. People like watching dogs working. That's why the BBC televised One Man and Its Dog for an awfully long time. So with a trail hunt, you go out and you lay a trail, and you do it in the way that an animal would have. A hunted animal would have gone in the past. So the trail layer is actually trying to lose the huntsman. So they use the same tactics that the hunted quarry would have used.
Surely the scent of a real fox would overpower that. Or, I mean, what do you use for trail hunting? How do you How does this work? How does this stop fox hunting? How does this replace fox hunting? In simple terms.
Well, in simple terms, we lay a trail that replicates a trail that, in the case of fox hunting, a fox would have laid. So when an animal was being hunted, instinctively they know how to try and avoid a predator. So they do things like running through other areas of smell or wet areas. They run through water. They'll suddenly turn around and change position, direction, all those sorts of things. So the trail hunter, the trail layer, sorry, will lay the trail in a similar sort of way, and the huntsman and the hounds have to work together to follow that trail.
What do they use to lay the trail? Candy floss or something very sweet, chocolate? What is it that you use to attract those dogs? Peanut butter?
All sorts of hunts use different types of, there's no standard answer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but most of them are using animal-based scents.
What's an animal-based scent?
Some use urine, some use just a part of a roadkill or an animal that's been killed by a gamekeeper, and some use something that might have been made with like boiling flesh. And the reason we use the animal-based scent is because that is what works best. We are trying to replicate the running of an animal in the countryside so that we can test the hounds. And so you have to have a scent that doesn't get laid too thick, it doesn't get laid too thin, it doesn't evaporate too quickly. Okay. It works well in humid conditions and dry conditions on wet.
It's just a one-time usage. They lay the trail and then it's just that day?
Yes, yeah. I mean on a day they will lay several trails.
Right, okay.
But the idea is to try and find something that the hounds would like to hunt.
And have you found that easier in terms of managing the dogs? Because obviously when you're fox hunting, it could be anywhere. You know, you're at the mercy of the dogs. Have you found that trail hunting has made it a lot easier in terms of control and exercise, and you can kind of guide them more or less where you want to go?
If the huntsman knows exactly where the trail's going, then there is no challenge to the huntsman in actually following it.
Could I suggest you don't tell the huntsman?
Yes.
Where it is?
The trail layer will be given a certain area that they are supposed to run in, and within that area they will then go whichever way they feel like on the day, and they will try and use the tactics that a hunted animal would use in order to try and replicate the challenge to the huntsman of hunting live quarry.
Okay, but my question, George, is the fox scent comes into this. Surely they just divert to the fox scent. How do you manage that?
Well, hounds instinctively don't actually want to change scent. If you're an animal and you're trying to hunt down your dinner, and you've been hunting your dinner for a while, and you're tired and it's tired, if you change onto a fresh scent, then you're less likely to catch it. So hounds are instinctively conditioned to not change scent. So if you use an artificial scent, if you use aniseed or something like that, you've got the two different instincts will be warring against each other, because if the hounds are hunting aniseed, you might have trained them to do that, but it's not particularly interesting to them because it doesn't instinctively trigger their hunting instincts. So if a fresh animal gets up, they might be more likely to change than otherwise. And
that's why you use animal scents to keep them on that.
And because, as I said, it is actually the best thing to use. The idea that we could use an artificial scent and that's just as good is really not logical. I mean, if you said to me, oh, I really fancy a bar of chocolate right now, and I said, fair enough, and I went off and came back and gave you a plate of cold porridge, and said, oh, it's just the same, any old edible thing will be just as good, you wouldn't be very happy.
No.
And so, in just the same way, an artificial scent is not going to appeal to the instinctive urges of the hound.
So do you think that the trail that you're laying, as in terms of the exercise and mental stimulation that the hounds are getting, it's just as good for them as chasing a fox? Would you say that? Would you say that you have successfully replicated it? If it's all about the journey and all about the chase, it's more or less the same as far as the hounds are concerned?
Sense of smell is one of your strongest, and ours and the hounds' strongest senses. And they say that a dog's nose is 7,000 times stronger than a person's nose. I don't know how they work that out. So obviously the hound is going to know that what it is hunting is not a live animal. But you need to try and make sure that it carries on hunting that thing, and you've got to use a trail that makes them most likely to hunt it. And if they are following an animal-based scent, then you are working with that instinct to hunt something that smells of an animal. If you use an artificial scent, you're working against the instinct, and so they'd actually be more likely to change from artificial scent than they would
to the real one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Talk about terrier men for a minute. What's the situation with terrier men right now? Because there's been a bit of consternation about that. That's always been a bit of a sort of hidden pocket. Can you give me an update on what's happening there?
Well, don't forget that terrier work is something that happens all over the UK, much more than hunting. There's always been terrier work that's been going on that had nothing to do with hunting. Gamekeepers and shepherds and other people have used terriers for controlling foxes in the past. So terrier work is the activity of putting a terrier into underground to chase a fox out, and is actually specifically allowed within the Hunting Act. There is a clause within the Hunting Act that allows terrier work, and you can use one dog underground to flush the fox out so it can then be shot.
Yes.
And that is allowed to be carried on, and as before the Hunting Act, after the Hunting Act, it happens just as much where there is no hunt involved as it does.
Does it happen a lot with hunting though? Is this common practice? Is it, is that happening 2 or 3 times a week?
No, there is considerably less terrier work involved with hunting than there used to be, because of course we are hunting trails. However, if the hounds, when they are out hunting trails, mark a hole and indicate that there might be a fox underground on that hole, then the hunt will move away, and if the gamekeeper or the landowner or the farmer wants that hounds to be the fox to be investigated, then terrier men can come in and do that, and that will be a completely separate activity to the trail hunting that's going on. It might be done by terrier men that work with the hunt, it might be done by terrier men that work with the gamekeeper, or whoever.
Thanks so much for clearing that up. And you touched on a very important point whereby the hounds will move away from the area.
Yeah.
So you've got quite a lot of control over these dogs.
Yes.
Tell me a bit more about the trail hunting, and because we're coming up to an election, aren't we? Things haven't been going brilliantly, let's be honest. What kind of, the Labour Party have said they want to close the loopholes. Is that one of the things that they're looking at closing? Do you have any details on that?
That's what they said after their conference, is that they are considering closing the loopholes in the Hunting Act. To which my answer is that there actually aren't any loopholes in the Hunting Act. Okay. The Hunting Act 2004, which was passed by the previous Labour government, was actually the culmination of 700 hours of parliamentary time. Every single clause in that bill, every word, every dot and comma has been deliberated, it's been debated over, it's been amended, it's been re-voted on. And so all of the clauses in the Hunting Act that actually allow farmers, landowners and wildlife managers to use hunting with dogs under certain circumstances were specifically written into that bill by Parliament to address the needs of those wildlife managers. And so those needs still exist. So if you readdress the Hunting Act, you're not suddenly going to, there's a loophole that we forgot. Right. 700 hours of parliamentary time were put into that to write clauses in specifically. There are no loopholes. No one woke up the day after it was passed and said, oh, yeah, we forgot to address so-and-so. Okay. So, yeah, there are no loopholes to close.
Right, okay. So are you happy with it as it is? Okay.
We are not happy with it. We also believe that the Hunting Act should be addressed. And the reason we believe the Hunting Act should be addressed is because it is, at the root of it, an animal welfare piece of legislation. The purpose of the Hunting Act was not to ban hunting with dogs, because it specifically did not do that. It allows hunting with dogs to carry on under certain circumstances. What it does is to control certain types of hunting, certain species that might be hunted, and certain reasons for hunting. But it actually writes down in legislation that it is perfectly legal to go out and hunt mammals with dogs in the British countryside. And the reason why the people proposed the Hunting Act was they said that under certain circumstances hunting with dogs might have had more adverse welfare implications than other methods of control. And so this has now been in position for 17 years. So everybody, whether you're pro-hunting or anti-hunting, everybody should actually want to know the answer to the question, has this had a beneficial effect on animal welfare?
Well, surely less foxes have been killed, so that's got to be good.
Less foxes have been killed by packs of hounds, but they have been killed, or they've died. And you have to ask, has that change benefited the hunted population? So we're talking about in this country brown hares, foxes and deer. Has it benefited those populations, and has it benefited the populations of other species in the countryside that those activities used to take place in? And it's not necessarily guaranteed that it has. So some research should be done to see whether the Hunting Act has improved animal welfare or actually had a detrimental effect. And if the purpose of animal welfare legislation is to improve animal welfare and it's had a detrimental effect, then yes, it should be reviewed.
Let's talk about your hounds for a moment. Now that you've gone from fox hunting to trail hunting, do you think there's been any change in the welfare and the situation with the hounds? Is everybody still getting out as much? Is it, as far as they're concerned, basically the same thing? They're out chasing a scent, they're out as a pack, they're enjoying themselves in the countryside. Is it still fulfilling that role, do you think?
Yes, there aren't as many hunts as there were before the Hunting Act came in, but it's 20 years later. And one of the things that affects how much hunting there is and how many hunts can operate is actually the changes in land use. The roads have been, new roads have been built, new railways, new housing estates. That actually reduces the amount of land that a hunt can operate over. And when you lose a lot of land, then hunts start to amalgamate.
Yeah.
So that you have enough hunt country to be able to carry on going 2 days a week. Okay. And so there will always be fewer hunts. And in 50 years' time, even if there were no other changes, there will be fewer hunts in 50 years' time than there are now, because there will be less countryside. Interesting
answer. How do you feel about hunt saboteurs? How much of an impact are they having? Are people just getting to the point where they're very interesting with a hunt saboteur? I mean, they're almost like a vigilante taking the law into their own hands, which you wouldn't accept that in any other sort of sphere of life, would you? Being dressed in a balaclava and wearing black. Do you, even though obviously very prestigious people go hunting, do you feel that you're a bit intimidated, that it's a bit more trouble than it's worth, that you don't want to be attracting that kind of behaviour? Do you think hunt saboteurs have had an effect on the amount of hunting that's been done? Oh yeah, hunt saboteurs have a huge effect, because a lot of them turn up wearing balaclavas and black costumes and act in very intimidating manners. Some of them are actually violent. A lot of them are very well intentioned. They genuinely think that they are acting in the interest of animal welfare, but they're not, because they don't understand how things are going on in the countryside, and particularly when they are actually sabotaging hunts that are hunting within the law and that are hunting trails or hunting drag. And hunt saboteurs turn up and actually do things that take the hounds out of the control of the huntsman. The huntsman is there trying to hunt his trail and make sure that if a live animal gets up, the hounds carry on hunting the trail and don't hunt the live animal. If the hunt saboteurs start blowing horns and playing recordings of music and spraying additional trails and scent all over the countryside, then it actually makes it more difficult to control the hounds, which means that it's more likely that they will get out of control and hunt an animal that they shouldn't do. So they come along with this great intention of trying to do good and actually cause harm. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and this often happens with hunt saboteurs. They've got good intentions, but they just don't know what they're doing. But they have exposed a few things, haven't they, over the years, particularly with the use of video. There's been a number of incidences. I mean, obviously there was a huntsman that got into trouble, then his name got cleared, if you remember that. And then there's been numerous incidences. Do you want to talk to me about some of those well-known ones?
We are all governed by the law, and but virtually every law that has ever been written by man has been broken by another man, and that is something that happens. I can't say that every single person who goes hunting is a saint. Just the same way that the hunt saboteurs shouldn't be able to say that every single person who goes hunting is evil. The majority of people who go hunting are genuinely trying to work with this law, which we consider to be bad law, and badly motivated law, but we have to work within it. But yeah, there will be some people, as with every law, who break it, and those people, if they are caught breaking the law, should be punished. But
there have been some severe examples, haven't there? And how do you think that makes the rest of the hunting community feel?
It makes the rest of the hunting community feel extremely annoyed that those people are bringing the entire community into disrepute, because we tend to be sort of painted with the same brush in a way that, you know, if someone breaks the speed limit, people don't go around and say, well, everybody breaks the speed limit, you know, they're all evil. And yet that is the way that we are painted by our opponents. And, you know, when things come up where we are aware that the law has been broken, we do have the Hound Sports Regulatory Authority, and they will impose sanctions on the hunts, which can include going up to actually abolishing the hunt.
And I think there was one.
That has happened in the recent past.
Yeah. So you have dealt with certain issues.
Yes.
You're not trying to defend somebody that's done something wrong. You know, there's regulations in place.
Yes, we have regulations in place. We do act when information is given to us. But it's also the fact that a lot of spurious accusations are made. And there are 10,000 days of hunting that happen in an average hunting season. If you think of 250 odd hunts going out twice a week for 6 months, it actually adds up to 10,000 days of hunting. Wow. And the hunt saboteurs are out there frequently, out there with their cameras trying to catch us out. And this is happening out in the open countryside. It's not secret, it's not covert, it's not done at night. You know, we meet at 11 o'clock in the morning with horses and hounds, and you know, it's not a hidden activity. And yet all these hunt saboteurs with 10,000 days of hunting a year to go at, you know, only find a few instances where they can bring charges, and most of those times they try and bring charges are disproved. You know, the number of convictions of people actually breaking the law, very, very few. And the antis always talk about how many convictions under the Hunting Act are made each year, but a lot of those convictions are for things like poaching. It's not just prosecutions against registered hunts.
Of course.
You know, anybody who hunts with a dog in the countryside, whether they're a registered hunter or not, can be prosecuted in the Hunting Act. So the statistics are often used against us to make it out that registered hunts are being more disobedient than they actually are.
Right. So what is the difference between drag hunting and trail hunting? Because there's drag hunting and trail hunting. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, drag hunting and trail hunting are two different activities, which is why have different names. Drag hunting is something that has gone on for generations, and it is an equestrian activity. The purpose of drag hunting is to allow the riders and the horses to go as fast as possible over as many jumps as possible. And so the person who is laying a drag needs to work out where all those jumps are and work out the most efficient route to go around that piece of countryside to cover all those jumps as quickly as possible. And in most places there's only one way to do that, or possibly two or three. So everybody knows, once they've hunted there a few times, pretty much what route they're going to take. The hounds don't have to do a lot of hunting, they just need to go fast. So the person laying a drag is trying to make sure that he leads the hounds in exactly the same route that everybody knows, so that the people riding horses can jump as many jumps as possible.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, the purpose of trail hunting is to allow people to watch the huntsman work with the hounds. And it can happen in a place where there's no jumps at all. And so the person laying a trail, rather than trying to make sure that the hounds follow him, will actually try and lose the huntsman and the hounds. They will use the same tricks that a hunted animal might have used, like doing sudden turns, like running through areas that have got muck being spread, or sheep or something, to cover the smell. And they are trying to lose the huntsman within that round. And the people who are watching the huntsman work the hounds. They're not that interested in riding and jumping. If the riding and jumping happens, then that's a bonus, but you can do it in places where there isn't jumping, because the purpose is watching the hounds. So the main difference is that the drag layer is trying to make sure that the hounds don't lose him, whereas the trail layer is trying to make the hounds that they do lose him without cheating.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, George. It's not over yet, because I do want to ask you, honestly, what do you do if you are hunting and a live animal gets up? You mentioned that earlier. what do you do?
Well, if we see that a live animal has got up, then we will try and stop the hounds as quickly as possible and get back onto the trail that we were hunting. Or if we can't find that, we lay a new one. And this is something that's always been a problem, because back in the day when we were hunting live quarry, foxhounds were only supposed to hunt foxes and beagles were only supposed to hunt hares. So if foxhounds found a hare or a deer, then they would be stopped from doing that. And when the huntsmen work with their hounds and know them really well, you can actually start to hear from the way that they are, what we call speaking, barking, as they hunt. You can hear the fact that the note changes. And so if they hear the note change, it could be because it's a different ground condition or something, but that then makes you start, and when you think, oh, that's wrong, then you would try and change back. You stop the hounds, and this used to happen in the olden days. And actually, the term that they use for hounds hunting the wrong thing is riot. And you talk about the hounds rioting when they are doing the wrong thing. And the reason for that is that's the Old English word for rabbit. And so when hounds hunted a rabbit rather than a fox, you called it riot. And that is a term that's actually gone through from hunting into the law. So when police talk about people rioting, it's the same word as hunting. So when the police read the Riot Act, they're actually reading the Rabbit Act. So you cannot go out into the countryside and not find mammals. It's always going to happen. You're working with dogs, which are animals. They don't understand the law. They've never read the Hunting Act. So accidents will happen, but we have to make sure that we overturn them as quickly as possible and get back onto what we should be doing.
Thanks, George.